All right, everybody on YouTube, we are live right now with the behind the scenes of Successfully Chaotic, and I'm your host, Maria Daniels. Today I have Beth Bullock, and Beth Bullock and I have known each other for a few years now, and we've done different projects along the way. But I wanted to have her on today because on this show we do talk a lot about obviously the ups and downs of life in a real, raw, and authentic way. And Beth has got an amazing story and a new brand called Bossy Llama, and I really wanted her to just share with you all just the why and the purpose behind the brand.
Sure. Thanks, Maria. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, Bossy Llama is new for me. It's something a little bit different than what I normally do. But the reason behind it is over the last few years, we've taken some pretty hard hits. So to dig right in the very beginning, to start at the beginning of our story and why this is happening. In 2014, we lost our oldest son to a heroin overdose. And as a business owner, that's hard. That's really hard to manage that. You know, we'd gone through about a 9-10 year addiction with him anyway from the time he was in high school. He was 27 when we lost him. And so at the time that it happened, he had been home 48 hours from his third 28-day program. And in my mind, 28 days at that time was treatment. So I'm thinking, okay, we're good. In the middle of all this, in the year or two prior to his death, we had also been very fortunate with our accounting firm to be able to come into with some franchises who were sending us new clients. We were growing very quickly. I was hiring employees, which I hadn't really had very many employees in the past. Excuse me. And so what happened there was all of a sudden, the morning that he passed, everything came to a screeching halt. And it sounds really weird, but I guess it was just my brain deflecting. But in that moment, I'm like, what am I going to do with my clients? People need stuff today. I've got accounting to do today. What am I going to do? So I screamed out, it was a little bit more than reaching out at that point, to some people to say, hey, I need some help. So I, employee on hand, the franchise organizer, people who in the operations, they jumped in. What I learned through this process is, wow. As a business owner and then going through this, it's one thing to go through the addiction part of this with your kid or a family member. But once that happens and they pass, it's a whole new ballgame. It took probably a good 3 weeks, 2-3 weeks before I could even come into the office. It took 3 hours to get a shower and dry my hair and not put makeup on. So things were changing rapidly. On top of that of running the business and then having other kids, to have to consider. So what I did, I came in a couple hours a day for a couple of weeks. And our clients are all over the country. And we're in about 30 states and we have clients everywhere. Through this whole process, they were fabulous. They were calling and sending notes and sending cards, and they just bent over backwards. They were just amazing clients, and they were so good to my family. So I felt like I owed them a phone call. I don't always get to talk to my clients all the time. I do in the beginning, but a lot of times they'll get paired off with their own individual bookkeeper. So I don't always get to talk to them after that point unless they need coaching or something like that. So I felt like at that point I owed them a phone call from me because they had all taken their time to take care of us so well. So what I found through those individual phone calls was I literally had about 75% of my client base who were dealing with something in addiction, whether it was with a spouse, a family member, a child, whether they had lost somebody or they had someone in treatment or they had somebody spiraling out of control and they had no idea what to do. So that led to a lot of conversations, a lot of tearful calls between me and some. And I had some that called that would just call the girls and say, how's our girl doing today? I had a few, excuse me, that called and just said, okay, how you doing today? Can I pray with you today? And they did. So, it really took about 3 years to clear the fog in my head. This happened in 2014, and now 2021, and finally in the last year and a half, couple years, it's kind of been a little bit more focused. I've found my lane better. I can't have finally admitted at one point that I can't sit and do bookkeeping anymore. I just can't. I can't focus on it. But that's okay. I don't have to, because I have a team that's perfectly capable of doing that for me. So what happened through all of this is I really learned where my place is now, and my place here has changed. And I have learned that there's a lot going on in the world of addiction and recovery and addiction services. Through all this, we started our own nonprofit to work with families. So a lot of that's taken a lot of my time. But what I've come to realize in the last year is nobody's talking to business owners. And there's a lot of business owners out there who are either dealing with addiction in their own family, or who are dealing with it with employees within their firm. If you have questions, you can jump in anytime.
Yeah, I will. I'm just letting you kind of lay the foundation, and then I'm kind of collecting questions as we go along.
So, my husband works at the Ford plant here in Cincinnati and Sharonville, and nobody said anything about this until we lost Robbie. And Rod's been there for 28 years, and everybody knows him. And so that opened doors for them to come to him and start talking. The UAW there's been phenomenal with us. They've really had our back on this and supported us in the nonprofit. And so where all this is coming from is there's a huge stigma around addiction. There's a stigma around addiction within your job, in your employment, in your workplace. There are employees who are struggling and don't want to talk to their coworkers or their boss about it because they don't want people to think that bad of them or their kid. There are people like me who own a business and have to manage day by day to get through this. There are a lot of different layers to this, and nobody's addressing it. Nobody's talking about it. So what do we do about that? We started our nonprofit to find the gaps, fill the gaps, and serve in our community. That's what Bossy Llama is about. We have to be able to get to the business owner, help get them to a healthy place, help the business stay healthy, but then be able to create a program for that business as a benefit program or whatever that needs to look like. But then to help the employees have a safe place to come, but then have help. There's so many like avenues of this, because if you have a child in addiction, maybe you have a grandchild, we have a family member's little boy that we have custody of now who's fallen into this. I've laughed and said, if I didn't own my own business when we first got him through children's services, I'd have got fired. There were court dates and doctor's appointments and visits and agency visits and home visits and everything. 3 or 4 days a week I was running, doing something for a long time. So how do we support the business owner? How do we support the employees? How do we fill that gap so that these stigmas go away? And then how do we build a program to facilitate those needs? Because I'm a firm believer, investing in your employees. Invest in your employees, and it's going to come back tenfold.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's kind of how we got to this place.
Well, and as you were talking, I kind of had a couple of questions that came in my mind. One of those is, you kind of laid the tragedy that you went through out. And for people that have lost a child, they can probably really feel the pain that you must have felt. And for those who have not lost a child, we can just imagine the horror that you went through during that time. But one of the things that kind of came to my mind during this time is people that I do know, other than yourself, that have lost a child, specifically to drug addiction. There's also almost this shame attached to it. Shouldn't be, but there is this shame attached to it that if I would have, if I could have, I should have type of thing. And I think that can be so much more damaging than just losing a child, to be able to, have those things that are playing in your mind. And even the off chance that somebody else is having those thoughts, and I think it usually comes back to just a series of miscommunications, of ignorance on the topic, of not really taking the time to realize that this is not isolated events. I don't think I know a person that is not somehow affected by drug addiction. It may not be themselves or a spouse or a child, but I mean, I've told you, my brother has struggled. It ends up being a family event. And I think that's kind of where I've seen the problems with a lot of these rehabilitation facilities. There's several problems that I've seen, but one of those is they typically only deal with the addict themselves and not the why behind it, and not the family members that are supposed to be in a supportive place, because, he's not my brother's obviously my brother, not my child, but I still feel helpless a lot because I want to do something, but I don't know what to do, you know?
Yeah, that's a good point. It's that the siblings always get left behind. I mean, they really do. My kids will tell you that. It's one of the reasons why they have been so supportive with us with our nonprofit, because they, you're focusing so much on that one child because you think you can fix that kid. And then up until that point, we thought we knew nothing. I mean, anybody I talk to now and you say, well, I thought 28 days was treatment, you should be fine now. I know better. That was probably the dumbest thing I could have ever thought. But there is a lot of shame and a lot of guilt and a lot of, I should have done this. I mean, yeah, we've second guessed a million times. But also too, sometimes you just need somebody to step in and say, you know what, that shame and that guilt and that second guess, that's grieving. That's part of the grieving process. And until you have somebody tell you that, you don't really know. You just kind of, and honestly, Maru, I got to a point where I was ready. I was done. I was closing this business. I was done. I'd been doing this for 15 years. There's no way I was going to sit here and do this anymore. I can't do it. And a very good friend of mine said to me, you are not going to make this decision out of emotion. You're not doing it. I'm not going to let you. She said, you're going to suck it up. You're going to pull up your bootstraps, put on your big girl panties, and you're going to go to work. And that was the best thing anybody ever did for me, because I would have stayed home and just given into the grief and all of it. And it would have been horrible. What example would that have been for my kids?
Exactly.
You still, it's a horrible thing to go through. It changes your life forever. You will never be the whole person that you were before. But what are you going to do about that? I had employees. I have their families depending on me. We have a lot of clients that are depending on us to take care of their business. And I couldn't just sit down and not do anything. What would that have said to my kids? And, so that's why we're doing this, because I didn't have anybody. Yeah, I went to counseling. I still go to counseling, but
it's just one puzzle piece, right?
Yeah, it is. And it's like, I got to a place where I was ready to sell this. I worked really, really hard to get these processes and these systems down, and everything that we do here for the bookkeeping side is, excuse me, all online, streamlined, online, virtual. That's why we can be in 30 states. And it's a very great process. But I had someone that was honestly a 30-year CPA, and he looked at me and said, I can't do what you're doing. I said, I can't do that. I can't keep up with that. He said, don't sell this. Don't do this. He says, you've worked too hard to build this and get this where this is. So that was really kind of like a step back. And I'm like, because, when you're in this every day, you take it for granted. You don't think about it. Okay, well, I'll just sell it and go on, whatever.
But also when you're drowning, you're just looking for a life raft somewhere, because again, I've not been in exactly the place that you have, but I've been through some traumatic stuff where I just needed to be able to take a breath, and something had to give.
Exactly. And you just need that extra person there. That's why, with Bossy Llama, it's going to be so important. We want to focus on the business owner first. We want to focus on them. We want to help them get healthy, help their family get healthy, help them be able to get to a place where they can level up to that next step and say, okay, all right, we got this. We're going to move forward, and then be able to bridge that gap and help their employees.
Yeah. And I think that's important, because whether it is the business owner themselves that are directly dealing with your addiction, or it's an employee, it comes back to affect the business as a whole. So going ahead, and you mentioned processes, going ahead and having processes in place for if that is starting to directly, kind of come into your business on what needs to be done, because this idea that it's not our problem is so flawed in so many ways. It is our problem. We may not know what to do. There's lots of times I don't know what to do, but with my brother specifically. But as far as like with the business itself, if the business owner is dealing with it directly, being able to have somebody coming in a supportive role to say, you focus on what you need to focus with. We have this is huge. It's huge.
It is. And that's what I had. I mean, I had an operations person from the main franchise we work with, and I had my girl here, and they're like, you don't worry about this. Don't even walk in the door. We got this. They notified all the clients. They took care of everything. I had another friend, CPA, who stepped up and offered, help. And it's, in that moment, that's what I needed. That's exactly what I needed, And then when you come back, you're right. This is a family. Addiction is a family thing. It affects every aspect of your family, and it doesn't matter how hard you say it doesn't. It does. Everybody handles it differently. And just like where we were, I take it for granted now. Well, it's been how many years have we been in an opiate epidemic? How many years have we had this going on now? 6, 7, 8, 9 years now that it's been really out there, and we've been really focusing on it. But still, I meet families all the time who don't know what to do. Well, how do I handle this? How do I handle her? How do I do this? So there's, so we work with them on enabling, because I did it. You feel bad because you can't come home, from the military for Christmas. And what's mom do? Send him $100.
Yep.
And then you get the phone call from the daughter-in-law. Did you just send him $100? Because you know what he's going to do with that. I'm like, it's just that kind of stuff, and then as you go along through this, and those are second guessing things. Those are things you look back. I still look back on that, how silly that was. But, as a business owner, we're out here alone a lot of times in what we do. That. I mean, you're out doing what you're doing, and you've got a whole list of things in your head you need to do. And, so we need help. We need help. We don't know what to do. Just because we're business owners doesn't mean we know everything. So that's the goal. That's really our goal, is really to work with the business owner, help them and their family get healthy and understand. And if you're a business owner that doesn't have this in your family, then the next step is then working with your staff and helping them understand. And, there's a whole process that we have to really address the issue, because there's a lot of things that come with this. It's not just addiction. It's not just drug addiction. I mean, we do this from a trauma-informed approach, where we help the business owner and help the employees understand what trauma is and how it affects development and how it affects every situation. Everybody suffered trauma at some point. I mean, we've all lived through 2020, and that's traumatic enough, so there's trauma. But it's how do you then respond to that in a healthy way? So we do a trauma-informed approach to all the support and the training that we do. Everything that we build is from a trauma-informed approach. And then it's helping support them. I mean, this goes across trauma. When there's addiction, there's abuse, there's a lot of times human trafficking. A lot of different things play into this, that people need to understand what's going on, because the more you know, the better you can react to it. And the
less stigma.
Exactly. It's this fear of the unknown. I'm a firm believer that the more you dwell on something, the worse it gets. So let's not dwell on it. Let's learn what it is. Let's learn all these different aspects. Let's learn appropriate responses. Let's work on our own trauma. And then let's build a good comprehensive program for the business to be able to support their employees. Because as with this little boy we're kinship care providers for him. If I had a W-2 job where I was going working for somebody else, that would have been a problem.
Yeah.
That would have been a big problem. So what do you do if you have someone in your employment that gets a child at off hours? How are they supposed to get to work the next day?
Yeah.
What are they going to do with that child? You're bringing a child into your home now that's probably very traumatized. What are you going to do? Get up the next morning, drop them off somebody at daycare they don't even know? Those are the things we have to work through, and we have processes to do that. But those are some of the things that happen to be able then, because if not, you're gonna have that employee is going to be taking time off. If you're paying them vacation time or personal time that they have to take off, and then you have to replace them for that day, that's double. So what can we do to help you reduce the cost of that, but be able to offer a program for your employment to take care of them and their family?
Exactly. And I like that you're approaching this from two different levels to say, if you have drug addiction directly, as the owner and or as the employee, with themselves or a family member, or if they've been affected on the other side where they're the ones that's taking in these children that are unfortunately kind of caught in the middle of this, either way, that causes, more stress, more trauma, more of questions on what to do. And I love that you're approaching this from both angles because I've seen it from both angles. I've been through a lot of it from both angles. And, you are very much left with this what to do. And I was lucky enough, I had my brother's kids, for a while. So I've got that too. You get the phone call, you better come get them. If not, they're going into, yeah. I'm just like, I mean, what do you do? You're of course going. So, it turns your life upside down. And even if you're willing to do it, there is this level of upheaval. And I had other children in the house, upheaval. I mean, there's this whole thing that goes on when you have any big life change like that. It causes upheaval. It causes upheaval for, the household that trickles into the workplace, and it just kind of goes from there. So being able to know that these are possibilities and already have the processes in place to tackle it, it's going to just cause so much less stress and so much less loss as far as, financial losses. And, because you got to look at it even from a productivity level. And yes, a lot of this is very emotional driven and everything, but as far as the business itself,
Yeah.
you do have to look at it from a level of a financial, aspect of it too. And, being able to already have those steps in place is going to allow that business to still stay in a place that it needs to be financially and, with the productivity and still be able to help, the person that is going through the struggles.
Yeah, and this whole plan too is designed to involve the community. Because we have some that we're contacting the daycares in the area and talking to the daycare, and we say, okay, what can you do with this business and help me be able to set up a program that if a grandparent gets a grandchild 7-8 o'clock at night, all they have to do is call this number and say, okay, I'm going to be there with little Johnny tomorrow at 7 o'clock. Where's the paperwork for that? Where's, making that happen, because, those are the things that need to take place. And it's, things you can be uprooted. You can fall into stress. You can look at a situation and say, oh my gosh, how did I get here? And this is such crazy. But if you have a plan in place, it makes it a lot easier.
It does.
Those employees know. And I can tell you, just with Rod at work, there were people that would come to him that were dealing with this, had been dealing with this, and they never said anything.
Back to the shame and the stigma.
Yeah, but because Rod did talk about it and everybody knew him, that kind of was like their open door, and he's worked to help get several, people, family members and stuff, into treatment over there. So it did open a door for that. So it's like, it's only a horrible secret as long as it's a secret, right?
Exactly.
So, let's put some light on it. Let's bring it out. Let's create a plan. Let's work with that. I'm telling you, it would have been great to have somebody to work with here that would have been able to, to be on me and say, help me with a goal. Cause I can remember that week, with our nonprofit, we've created a packet of information that we've given out to law enforcement stuff to carry. And I can remember we created that off of the fact that just sitting there that week, I remember just sitting there on the front porch and saying, just tell me what I need to do. Just tell me what I need to do and I'll do it. I can't think. I can't figure it out. Just tell me what I need to do. And it was kind of even the funeral home. Just tell me what we need. Just do it. So that's where you get. It would really been nice, and there are some times when you just need some time, you just need some time to fall apart. But, it would really been nice to have somebody that I could have, worked with for a little bit.
A life raft.
Yeah.
Because when you're going through trauma, name the trauma, you can't think clearly. It takes everything within you to just get up and kind of barely go through the basic motions. And, and that's that. I think, when you're talking about, really reaching out to the community, one of the things that I think is so important is really realizing that most people are actually good. They are. And I know you watch the news and it seems like most people are terrible and horrible and don't give a crap. And there are a few like that, but most people are actually good. They may, sometimes come across wrong or whatever, but at the end of the day, most people I've ever dealt with, even if they have that outer layer, that hard shell, sometimes they really are caring on the inside, but a lot of times they just don't understand. And I think driving the education into the community and also encouraging them to kind of be a part, because that whole adage that it takes a village, can be literally applied to anything, including the fact that if we have, communities that are rampant with, the drug addiction and the fallout from that, because there's a fallout from it. It is a trickle down effect. Mm-hmm. If we already know that that's an issue, the root cause is not, attacking the addict with, well, you should just quit, or attacking the family. Why would you let them, or whatever it may be. And I think a lot of times that stuff ends up coming out because fear causes anger, and then anger causes fear. And then it just ends up being this like perpetual roundabout. And if you could get them to understand that, addiction sounds like, when you hear somebody talking about addiction, it seems easy. Okay, well, if you're addicted to drugs, just stop doing drugs. That's easy to say, but they don't realize from a literally medical standpoint what it does to the brain and how it changes the brain, and how, that when somebody tries anything, and I don't know very many people that hadn't tried something in high school or, something, that, you literally have a switch that a lot of people literally their DNA has a switch that just gets flipped on. And then all of a sudden they're more prone to addiction because it's the way that the hormones in the brain are. And I think a lot of people don't realize that and understand that. And I think if they did, they would think about things a little bit differently.
They would. And I will tell you, in the last 2-3 months, I have still heard from people in the medical field, well, she's an addict, she doesn't want help, so she can just go. Really? Because that is a lot of trauma. That is how, that's what we need to stop. We need to stop that assumption that they're just an addict and they don't want help. They don't know how to get help. And when you're a parent and then you've taken on a child, our situation's different because he's a family member's little boy. But, when you're a parent and you take on a child of your child, and that child is still living active addiction, your every day is up in smoke every day. You're waiting on that phone call. You're trying to take care of this child and then saying no to your child. You can't come see your kid because of this. It's people just don't even understand how difficult that is. And then if you have to work on top of it, I've worked with a lot of grandparents who have taken in grandkids, and grandma's had to quit. She's had to take a leave, from very good jobs. From being a nurse to, executive jobs, they had to choose their job and their grandchild. What else were they going to do? And then, we're to a place now. So this is why we hit the trauma part of it, because almost every person that I've worked with in the last 6 years has trauma coming from somewhere. As a child, something's happened to create trauma, and that trauma was left unprocessed.
Exactly.
And now, and a lot of the kids we've worked with, or the young adults we've worked with, they've grown up in homes where abuse and addiction and things like this were commonplace. That's just what happened. And these kids are literally growing up in homes where that is normal to them because they don't have healthy to compare to. And when you have that kind of life, and now all of a sudden you're being put over here, that takes a lot of care. And when you're that adult that's getting that child, you still have to work. You still have to go to work. What do? Do you need, so then it's, individually talking with each business owner, because we want to find out, what do you want? This is your company. What are your goals? What are your dreams? What are your strengths? What idea do you have going forward of how are you going to operate this business? Do you want to take a step back and train somebody to be you? Which is really kind of what I've done here. Mm-hmm. My dad always taught me. My dad worked IGA for 40 years. And he always taught me from a very early age, as a good manager works himself out of a job.
Yeah.
I don't need to be here. These women run this accounting firm seamlessly. I don't have to be here. They know what to do. They take care of everything. I don't need to be here. So that allows me to go out and do other things like, the nonprofit and things. But, what we want to know, what do you want with your business? What do you see? What do you want to make available for your employees? And then how can we train them to understand what addiction is, what trauma is. I tell you, it really opened up my eyes when, I'm just kind of the mom. I have to know everything. I need to know everything about my kid. I thought I knew everything before we lost him. And it was very evident that I did not. So when I started learning more about addiction and just learned how it affects your brain, and it physically changes the neural pathways in your brain. And I learned that. I was like, wow, that made a whole lot more sense to me. When I learned trauma, made things make a lot more sense to me. So these are the things that we have to, help people understand, because you can really, if it wouldn't have been for my friend Peg, who said, you're not shutting the doors out of emotion, I would have shut the doors.
Yeah. So kind of, I know there's probably a lot of people that are questioning, like maybe they're thinking about somebody that they know. So maybe they're questioning, I do know somebody that's struggling through this, and maybe they've unfortunately lost a child, or maybe the child's incarcerated, or maybe it's a spouse, or whatever. But what would be just some tips and steps that you can tell them that they could take to kind of start to dig out of the problem, to get help, to find resources? I mean, other than obviously contacting Bossy Llama, but even before that, maybe they end up listening to the replay of this and it's 11 p.m. What is something that you can tell them, whether it's mindset tips or actionable tips or whatever, from your standpoint on, going through those motions?
Okay. The very first thing I would tell you, and I'm telling you this because I did it, stop saying not my kid, because it is your kid. Our kids make mistakes. So stop saying it's not my kid. And, it's not our fault as parents. We do the best we can. Now, with that being said, there are some parents out there that do screw up their kids. We all know that. But for the most part, is to get your head out of the sand and realize that if you start seeing sneaky behaviors and hiding things and smelling weird smells out of their bedroom and finding different things in their room. And there's things that we can teach parents what to look for. We don't really publish it because we're not
obviously,
but they probably know more than we do, I'm sure. But the first thing is realize what's going on and stop saying it's not. Living in denial. And here we go, second guessing. If I knew then what I know now, we would have made a lot different choices, probably a lot better choices. So stop saying not my kid. The second thing is, one, get yourself into counseling, because you cannot help your child heal unless you are healthy. And you cannot understand how to help them unless you've dealt with your demons, and we all have them.
All of us.
So, yeah, get yourself into some good counseling. Find a mentor or somebody in your area. We work with a lot of families. A lot of times it's just a phone call. Learn what addiction is. Be very, very clear on the limits of your enabling. And understand. It's almost like, Marie, you almost have to kind of like put that dividing wall down and say, okay, this is my boundary, because we all have to have boundaries with them. But then realize that I cannot keep saying, oh, but they're hungry. Oh, but they're this. Oh, but they're that. Okay, as much as the trauma has probably gotten them into this and they can't make decisions, once they're into this, whether it's heroin or meth or whatever, especially meth is really going around bad. It's going to get really, really bad before it gets any better. And they have to want the help. And understanding that, but understanding that you don't have to put up with a lot of, excuses. It's just really getting a mentor. And we do it for everybody. It's part of our nonprofit. It's what we do, on that part of it. But getting a mentor to help you understand what this is. So I would say, stop saying it's not my kid and get a counselor. Those are the first two. And be open your mind to learning, because you don't know. Yeah, I don't care if you've gone through this for the last 10 years and you've drug them out of places and you've done all this stuff. You know what you know about that. But you need to you're going to have to hear some hard things. I did. It's hard to hear.
And I think that's important to do, though. I think, if you ignore the hard things, and real quick, That's Strange is another podcaster that comes on here, and he said, it's good stuff, Beth. And,
Thanks.
you know, but yeah, I think that sometimes it takes going through the muck, going through the hard stuff and just literally facing it head on. And I know how difficult that is on different things. I mean, you could say that for lots of things, but until you kind of force yourself to do that, you can't get to the other side. And the other side is obviously where the healing is, where, and that's where you want to be. So I think it's important that parents everywhere, or spouses or siblings or whoever is dealing with this, employers, that they realize that, even though there is still a little bit of a stigma attached, all this stuff, there's so much of it going around. There's so many people that are struggling with this on different levels that there shouldn't be. And you should talk about it. And, you mentioned find a counselor, find a mentor, find a friend, and really start to open up about where your struggles are, because as embarrassing as it may be, or you're not sure if you should, and the idea that you're afraid people are going to judge you or whatever it is, the more people that go ahead and do it afraid anyway, the less of the stigma that there's going to be. Because if everybody starts talking about, their journey with it, wherever that is, people are going to start to realize, oh, them too. Oh, them too.
Yeah. And you know what? And you have to practice this. You can't just wake up one day and say, okay, funds cut off, I'm done. You can't just wake up one day and do that. I mean, you have to practice it. You have to mentally get yourself to that point. But you have to understand that you have to have good boundaries. You have to set those boundaries, not just for you, but for them. And you have to practice this. And what I tell parents that we work with all the time is practice every day saying, I'll take you to treatment. I'll take you to treatment. When they say, Mom, I need this, Mom, I need you to do that, and they get pretty belligerent about what they want. I mean, they're, well, you owe me this. No, I don't owe you anything. I don't owe you anything. I'll take you to treatment. But they have to see, because you know what? They need that. They need that structure. They need that stability. And the one thing that we do a lot of street outreach. So we work with a lot of girls in our area here that at these hotels and things down by our office. And the one thing that we are with them is consistent on telling them the truth, being flat out honest. I'm not going to make you do anything you don't want to do. I don't like what you're doing. You deserve better. And I can get you to a place where you're better. If you don't want to be in this hotel room, you tell me, I'll come get you. But what I always tell them is, I'll take you to treatment. I'll get you safe. I'll take you to treatment. So as a parent, and I tell parents that too, you have to set your boundaries. Once it goes over that boundary, if they really are hungry and they really need clothes or something, that's where we come in our area here. That's where we come in, and we'll take them a hygiene bag, or we'll take them clothes, or, we'll drop off a lunch sack to them or something like that. But, that's okay for us to do to a certain point. But we have to be careful too that we don't want to enable them as well, because, enabling is whatever you're doing is allowing them to continue in the behavior that they're in. And that's enabling. So if you ask yourself, is what I'm about to do going to allow them to continue doing what they're doing? Is if I put gas in their car, assuming that at this point they have a car, if I put gas in their car, is that going to free up any money that they have for drugs? Probably. If I feed them, of course, we don't want them to be hungry, but these kids they're resourceful. It's one thing I learn all the time. They're resourceful. So again, it's being very, very careful about that enabling and setting those boundaries.
Well, they're resourceful because that becomes, their need.
Exactly.
It becomes, that's their brain gets rewired, and it's almost like they get to the point they can't stop it. And they do need that treatment. They do need that help. They do need those things that are set in place to help them kind of get over that hurdle. But until they're over that hurdle, it's like they can't help it. They're always going to be hardwired to do that.
Yeah. And that's why we do what we do in our outreach. A friend of mine, Alexis, and I do a lot of street outreach here. And that's the one thing that we really do is really make that connection so that they know they have someone there, giving them that little light at the end of the tunnel. That, because a lot of these girls don't have any hope at all. They're being trafficked right and left for their addiction, exploited for their drug addiction. And that's the one little thing that we make sure that we do is they know they have support. They know they have somebody they can call. They know, if when they're done, when they're ready to go, I've told every one of them, I don't care if it's 2 o'clock in the morning, when you're done and you're ready to go, you call me, I'll come get you. We'll get you in somewhere. And it's just building that rapport with them so that they know, because they have to be ready in their own mind. And then we can talk about that trauma part of, that thing all day long. But they have to be able to come to this in their own decision, their own way, in their own time. And when they're ready, that's when you swoop in and get them. But that's what we're building this whole time, is that support system.
Absolutely. Alex popped in here and said, I wish my parents would have had it when I was younger. It's important to have a real support system. And that's what Beth's on here to kind of share her own personal journey, obviously, and also some of the outreach and stuff that she's doing, and talking about her newer business. Cause you're like me, you're a serial entrepreneur.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
your newer business called Bossy Llama, really digging into the workplace and dealing with employers and employees to help be able to get them treatment if they're dealing with it directly, or support them in, processes and stuff to be able to help them heal and business to go on as usual. So, I think those are all super important things to really think about. And, I've known you for a few years now, and, your stories always touched me, because as a mom, my heart breaks for anybody that's lost a child, just breaks. And, one thing I wanted to have you kind of discuss, because we talked about this the other day when we were just chatting on the phone, is I think so many people want to do something or say something to somebody that has lost a child, especially to drug addiction or something that just seems so much more harsh. But they don't know what to do or say. And I think it's important. I can't say what to do or say because I've not been through it, but I think it's important that, for people that have unfortunately been there, what would you advise somebody that has a friend or a family member or employee or employer that is unfortunately dealing with that deep loss? What are some things that you would have them say, and more importantly, maybe not say?
Yeah. So everybody handles grief and trauma differently. It's its own separate experience for each one of us. I think as someone who has lost a child, don't be offended at what anybody says, because people understand that people don't know what to say, and they're going to say something dumb. I mean, it's just what it is. I still do it, and I told you the other day, I still catch myself learning that another, someone has lost a child. I still catch myself going, oh my God, that's so horrible. And I'm like, maybe it's horrible. You've done it. But what I feel, what I process, and what my husband feels and processes is not exactly what somebody else. So I don't understand exactly what another mom is going through. I've told my kids through all of this too, is I know how I feel as a mom, but I don't know how you feel as a sister or a brother. So just understanding that everybody, this processes differently, and everybody grieves differently, and there's no time limit on it. What I found to be the most helpful when people came around, because people come around you and they're scared. You can tell in their face, they're nervous. They're kind of, hands are kind of shaky, and they shake your hand or something, or they hug you and they're shaky because they're scared. They don't know what to say, but also understanding that they're grieving with you because it hurts them that you're going through this. Yeah. So when you're working with somebody, I just be flat out and say, you know what? I am so sorry. I don't know what to say. Because honestly, there are no words. You're not going to make it better. And just telling them that, I don't know what to say, but I'm here. I don't know how you feel. I need you to tell me how you feel. If you need something, I need you to tell me what you need. And sometimes it's just dropping something off at the house, or just a text thinking about you today. How's today going? Just being real and normal, not putting on any, you don't have to put kid gloves on for us. If we cry, it's okay. Cry with us. It's okay. And there's just a lot of things. I just be there. Just be there. Don't be afraid to be there. Don't be afraid to stand up and hug them and just say, I don't know what to say. I have no words.
Yeah.
That's okay. You don't have to have.
I think that's great advice. And I mean, unfortunately, there's so many people everywhere that are dealing with and have dealt with something this traumatic, and, being able to just be there for that person and just listen, just be there for when they need you. I think that's so important to do. And, I think discussions like this, I'm definitely an empath. Discussions like this, just like, oh, rip my soul out. But I still think they're so important to have because, again, it reduces that stigma. The more you talk about things, the more people, connect emotionally, and then they can say, I felt like that too, or I didn't think anybody else went through that, or because, the stigma that's related to drugs is typically that, it's only impoverished people in low income areas, da, 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 there's just so many stigmas related to it. And while, some of those are, in fact true, there are very good parents out there that unfortunately have had to deal with losing a child to something that is so harsh and horrific because, you know, life can be messy. And I say this all the time, life can be messy. And no matter how hard you try to be the perfect parent, you're not. I mean, I don't.
Yeah, and it's isolating. It's
It
so
is.
isolating, and as a business owner, when I felt this just individually, and we had friends that invited us over like the next week, just to get us out of the house. But it's so isolating because then you don't want to go anywhere because you feel like when you walk in anywhere, somebody's going, oh, there comes Ron and Beth. Here comes Ron and Beth. You feel like you're like raining on the party or something. And then, as a business owner, you still have meetings to go to. You still have things you have to do. You don't feel like being there.
Yeah.
But you still have to keep going, but it's isolating. And, when you walk in a room, it's not so much anymore, but, when I started going back to meetings, I'd walk in a room knowing everybody knew. I've lived in this area my whole life. I know everybody and everybody knows who I am. So it's like, you're not going to go anywhere where I don't know somebody. So everybody knew. And that people don't want to say anything or they want to say something they don't know what. It's isolating. So that's our whole goal with Bossy Llama is to break the stigma, to help you get through those phases of that, in the beginning, help you be able to get healthy and get to a point, because as time goes, the intensity does lessen. I didn't believe that when somebody told me, but it does. 3 years I had the fog and it took 3 years to really feel like myself again. And sometimes I have moments where I don't. So that's our whole goal with Bossy Llama is we want to be able to, nobody's addressing the business owner, as a parent, but then how many of us, this is our livelihood.
Yeah.
This is what we have to
We
do.
wear different hats,
We
right?
do. And who's gonna help us get through that? So that's the whole goal of that, is be able to do that and then help your employees so you can help them, and then build a strong staff of people so that your company can just, thrive through that.
I love that. And, really working with the community to drive that village, atmosphere, I think is the key, because at that point you're building the relationships and you're building the structure. And I think, that is something that really, it can change people's mindsets. And then it sounds silly and cliche, but it can go on to literally change the world because, it's the butterfly effect of things. And
and it's like, we worked really, the tagline kind of came up as like, real life right now.
Yeah, I love that.
Real life right now, because that's what's happening. Life happened. We were doing great and everything was wonderful. And of course, we had him, we were still dealing with his addiction for a long time, but when we lost him, it's like, everything stopped. And we're like, okay, so real life right now, it happens. It's happening. And how are we going to do that, as a business owner? And we have people to take care of, clients and employees and families. So we have to be, there's got to be something there for us too.
So can you share with everybody if they're a business owner and they're interested in working with Bossy Llama to go ahead and put together the processes, because it's the smart thing to get ahead of the game before it's a big problem, before it happens, because then you're clamoring around trying to figure out what to do. So get ahead of it. Where would they reach you, and kind of what's the process for that?
They could email me at beth@bossyllama.com. And my phone number, it's my cell number. Everybody has it. It's 513-212-8176.
All right. And that's perfect. And again, I really appreciate you coming on today and being, so real and raw about your journey. Unfortunately, creating a business like you have comes from a passion and a purpose. And
Yeah.
the fact that that purpose is driven from such a deep loss is, it's heartbreaking, but I really admire you for pushing forward and making it a reality, because I think it's an important thing to do.
Thanks for having me on today. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And for everybody listening, when this airs and drops onto Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all your other favorite podcast platforms, I'll make sure that the links to get a hold of Beth is in the show notes. And for all of you that have been watching on YouTube, I will go back and pop those in there as well. And, if you are struggling with drug addiction, or you have a family member struggling with drug addiction, reach out for help. And, Beth's a great resource because she's been there. And Bossy Llama, if you have a business or you're even an employee in a business, bring it to your boss's attention, because this is something that, creating that village, creating that structure, creating those processes now before it becomes a problem is so, so important. And let's reduce that stigma, because, addiction is something that a lot of people look at with kind of a negative outlook, and it doesn't have to be like that, because it's a struggle just like a lot of other struggles. So until next time, it's Maria Daniels with Successfully Chaotic, and my guest, Beth Bullock with Bossy Llama.
Thank you.
Thank you.